It may be time for you to have a very honest, hard conversation with yourself about your business and if it is still fulfilling you, or about your life and how you're living your life, if that is still fulfilling you. Just because something is making you money does not mean that it's still a right fit for you and the life you want to live.
Hey lovely, Lisa here, and before we dive into today's episode of She Talks, I have got a little favour to ask you. If this podcast has ever made you feel a little bit more confident, a little bit more inspired, or a little less alone in this wild ride of running your own business, then I would love you to leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. I know it sounds like a small thing, but it really helps get She Talks into the ears of more incredible women just like you, and it helps us keep bringing you the good stuff. And if there's an episode that made you go, oh my God, every woman in business needs to hear this, please share it with someone you love. Text it to your business bestie, add it to your stories, or drop the link in a group chat. However you do it, we are so grateful. All right, that's it from me. Let's jump in. What if the secret to scaling your business wasn't another strategy or sprint, but finally admitting you're burnt out and doing something radical about it? In this episode, I sit down with Alisha Robertson, founder of Doing Everyday Well, who shares how hitting rock bottom with burnout led her to walk away from a thriving business. Alisha shares what she learned about hustle culture, worth, and why self-care often looks nothing like what we see on Instagram. We talk through how to spot the signs of burnout, how to redefine success, and how to create a business that supports your life instead of draining it. This episode is a wake-up call for any woman feeling stuck in the cycle of doing too much. It's raw, it's honest, and it's incredibly powerful. Let's get into it. So you started Doing Everyday Well after your own experience with severe burnout. Can you take us back to that moment? Like, what made you finally say something has to change?
Yeah, so I was about a year postpartum from having my daughter. And before having her, I could hustle. I was so used to it just being me and my husband, and I could work all day. I could take a quick nap during the day, go back to working until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I could hustle through the weekends. And even then, I would kind of flow in and out of burnout, but I had nothing else requiring my energy. So it was pretty easy for me to kind of bounce back from it. And it wasn't until I had my daughter that I still tried to keep up with that same flow of working. And I realized, like, there is no way that I can do this. And there is no way that I could be the healthy mom, wife, friend, all the things, if I am continuously pushing myself to the edge. And during that time, I also struggled a lot with postpartum depression, which was a whole added layer of things that I also had to, now figure out how to manage. And having my daughter just really made me realize that the way I was running my business, the way the people that I admired, the entrepreneurs that I admired, how they were pushing like the hustle culture and you can sleep when you're dead. It wasn't healthy. It was not healthy. And I knew that if I would have kept that up mentally and physically, I was not going to be the type of woman that I wanted to be. And at that time, there was no success that would have been worth me possibly not being there to show up for my child. So I took a complete break. I wouldn't even say I took a break. I quit. I wrapped up. I was a business coach at the time. I wrapped up my last few clients that I had. I had no clue what I was going to do. I just knew that I needed to break the cycle. And for a lot of us, we think that, when we're burnt out, we can just go take a quick vacation and come back, or we can take a nap and come back. But that's just like putting a Band-Aid on like a bloody wound. Like if you need more than that. And for a lot of us, it takes cutting out the thing that was causing us the stress completely in order for us to heal that inner burnout. And for me, that was completely closing shop on my business and not even stressing myself out to figure out like what I was going to do next. I knew I just needed to stop that and everything else would hopefully fall into place. And it did. It was terrifying because it's really hard to let go of something that was working. It was working, but I had to let it go in order for me to truly heal the burnout, or else I would have just kept going through this same cycle over and over and over again.
I feel we should have put a trigger warning into this podcast today, because every one of our listeners is going to be both nodding their head and feeling horrified at the idea that we might need to quit what we do to heal burnout. So we're going to talk through the podcast today on a whole heap of topics around this, Alisha, because this conversation, it's very dear to my own heart. And I know that our listeners will most likely all be suffering from severe burnout. For me, I just shared with you, it was 8:56 a.m. and I just shoved a piece of chocolate in my mouth when we jumped on the podcast recording this morning, because I know for me, sugar is one of the ways I get through my days, and that isn't good for my adrenal and nervous system. But like you, I am a hardcore hustler, and I'm building something with an end in mind, and I love what I do. And as part of our podcast research, I noticed that you had a Twitter that went viral that said something, and I'll get you to share with our listeners, something about you can still burn out even when you're loving what you're doing. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I actually sent out that tweet. I remember exactly, it was a Saturday morning. I was laying there, like feeding my baby in the bed, and I had this like list of all these things I needed to do. And like, it's Saturday, it's beautiful. Like, I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be spending time with my family. And instead, in my head, there was a list of things I needed to do for my business. And I just sat there and thought, a lot of people think when you say I'm burnt out, they think, well, you don't like what you're doing. Just stop what you're doing. But like, you can love what you're doing. Your business can be working, your career could be working. It could be thriving, but you can still be burned out from doing something that you love. Parenting is exhausting and you love it, but you can become burnt out from it. Like, everything in this world takes work. And just because you love it does not mean that you're not going to eventually need some sort of break from it, or to set some sort of boundaries around it. And in that moment, I thought I was just venting. Like, I didn't know where else to put my thoughts at that time. And Twitter just so happened to be the space. And that tweet, it's still making the rounds today. And that went out maybe 5 years ago at this point. Yeah, it's been insane. It's been circulating around, but it just goes to show you how many people resonate with that idea. And especially as entrepreneurs, we're often told, like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But that's BS. Like, that is a lie. It's still work.
I 1000% agree with that. I love what I do every day for a living, and I have such utmost faith that we're building something that is unbelievable. It's a legacy piece. But I agree with you. I'm still tired. I still suffer from stress, and I still work way too hard. And I do have like a massive hustle mentality. And I know so many of our listeners do. So let's talk about like women falling into the trap of tying their worth to productivity. So it's like we glorify hustle, and therefore it's really hard to prioritize rest without feeling guilty. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think, I have so many thoughts around this, but for women, I feel like there have been so many labels placed on us. And with those labels have come with some pretty high standards. If you're going to be a mom, you need to be the best mom there is. You need to do all the things right. If you're going to be a wife, you need to do all those things to be a great wife. If you're going to go to school, if you're going to thrive in your career, if you're going to start a business, we have all of those labels on us, and then those expectations like take it up a notch. There is rarely ever any room for a woman to lack or to just aim for a C instead of an A plus. And I think for many of us, we internalize that. Like, we're told if society isn't going to view you in the same way they view a man. So you're going to have to work 10 times harder in order to be half a second better than they are. And we internalize that from a very small, young age. So when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur, even though we get into it thinking, I have all of these new freedoms now, I can make my own schedule, I can make my own rules, we still have those labels and all that internalized trauma in on us. And every time we do try to take advantage of the fact that we're an entrepreneur and we can take a break and we can take a vacation when we want to, we start to feel guilty about it. It's like, if I do take the weekend off, I'm not going to be as good. If I do choose my mental health over taking on that new client that I know is going to exhaust me, then the whole business is going to fall apart because everything relies on me. And I want us to know that it is okay for us to take care of ourselves. And that's really the reason why I focus my business around women entrepreneurs specifically, is because we're not just entrepreneurs. We are often like not the head of household, but we are the go-to parent in a lot of ways. We're the ones making the doctor's appointments. We're the one checking in on family. We're the one who are probably, still in our 9 to 5s, like working and doing things. Like there are so many labels and expectations put on us. And I really want women to know it is okay to stop. It is okay for you to use your vacation days at work to give yourself a break. It is okay to give your children to your spouse and tell them you need a break. It is okay to not post that piece of content because you just did not have the energy to create it. Like, it's okay. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself if you want to show up in the way that you want to show up. And I've noticed even in myself when it comes to like productivity and like getting over the guilt, I will trick myself into saying, oh, I'll just lay on the couch and do work. Or I'll work from bed today. And it's like, no, it's still work. It is still work. You need to close the laptop. You need to turn on Netflix and you need to rot.
Oh my God, I do that all the time. Or I can sit in a pool by a beach and I can still be on my phone working, but I trick myself into thinking that I'm on holidays.
Yeah, no, like your body may be relaxing, but your mind is still going. And like that is sucking up a lot of your mental capacity, which is also really, really draining. So we have to learn to like let go of the guilt. And what I tell people all the time is guilt is only felt when you're doing something wrong. If you hurt someone, you feel guilty because that was wrong. If you rob someone, you feel guilty because that is wrong. Taking time out for yourself is not wrong. Therefore, that guilt that you're feeling is a lie. It is not real. And you don't have to take that on as if it is the truth.
So how do we disable that? Because I 100% suffer from that. And as part of the same question, maybe it's connected or maybe it's not. I'd love to know. I've got so many questions I want to ask you, Alisha. This is a very hot topic for me personally as well. I feel like people tell me all the time that I have ADHD, but I don't. And I finish everything I start, and I've been tested multiple times and I don't, but I feel like part of the hustle mentality and the inability to rest and the almost chronic guilt when I do all ties in together with this high achieving type A personality that I have really developed for myself. I don't think I was like this in high school. I have no recollection of behaving like this when I was young. I think being a parent and running multiple companies at the same time, it's become like a new personality for me where I've become the provider and the nurturer and a clever businesswoman who gets on the media. And I've become so many different prototypes or personalities in one human that if I don't run, like Alisha, I literally run from one end of my house to the other in the mornings and evenings because walking is too slow. I don't get through my list of chores. Surely this is not normal. And I want to know like how on earth do I turn this off without dying?
Yeah. I was going to say without hurting yourself first. But so definitely always am an advocate for therapy. There are some things that you have to unpack and get to the root of why you feel this way. And from learning from therapy for myself, I've just realized that I grew up seeing women do the same thing. Like all the women in my family were hustling, moving, always doing it. I rarely ever saw them just sit and relax. And I learned that. I picked it up and now I do the same thing. So that has been a lot that I have had to try and like unpack for myself. And then also for the guilt and just trying to force yourself to slow down and get out of that cycle, you have to set boundaries around yourself and also around the work and your environment. A lot of people think when you think of boundaries, it's like, I need to set boundaries for this person in my life or this person that I'm working with. And yes, those boundaries are important, but we can be our biggest enemies in a lot of cases. So for me, setting a boundary around myself means putting that little app lock on my phone. So at a certain time in the evening, I can't access any social media apps, even if I wanted to. I can't do it. Or maybe that is blocking off your calendar so that you have this allotted time to take care of yourself. So no one can go in and schedule a call on top of that. So how can you set those boundaries around yourself when you are with your family? If you want to stay present around them or just enjoy your time alone, put your laptop in a completely different room, leave it in the car, leave it at the office so that you're not even tempted to watch Netflix with your laptop open. So how can you begin setting those boundaries around yourself? And Lisa, I will tell you, it is hard. It is so hard, but it's like a muscle. Once you keep doing it, you're going to fail at it a few times. It's not going to always work. You're going to get frustrated with yourself, but soon it'll catch on and you'll realize I just watched a whole movie and I have not looked at my phone. I have not checked my email, or I have not had a billion different calls scheduled in one day. And it's really hard, but it takes time and it takes work. But once you get there, you'll slowly begin to notice the difference of like, okay, I don't feel so frazzled during the day. I don't feel like I am constantly waiting for like the next thing to happen. You're adding more space into your day. And that's ultimately how you begin to prevent burnout bit by bit.
Wow. I started a few months ago, well, actually nearly a year ago, I started not working on Fridays. I realized that having children that are at school on a weekday, it's really important that I wanted to be able to have some space at home without anybody there. And I'm not always amazing at it, but often I do life admin on a Friday. So I might go and get my Botox or a facial or a massage, or I might, go to the shops and pick something up that I've been meaning to, but sometimes I just lie in my bed and sleep or watch a movie. And so that I don't always do it perfectly, but I think that has made a big difference for me I suppose that's what you're talking about, of like blocking time and religiously owning it. I also want to ask you, I sometimes feel like there's a really big divide between my head and my body. It's almost like I could put a line across my shoulders and say that my body can be really fractured and exhausted, but my head is like a weapon and it leads all the time. And it literally, my body feels like it's constantly running to keep up, and my head never stops to consider what my body needs. It's just, it's a muscle that is so elitist and high achieving. Yeah. And literally it exhausts my body every day. Is this a thing, or am I psycho-delusional?
Yeah, no. I completely understand what you mean, because a lot of times I love to walk. So I'll take really long walks and then like my body will feel depleted and I'll go and lay down. But my mind is like, no, girl, you got things to do. Let's get up. I don't care if your muscles hurt. You need to get up. So that I completely understand that. One of the things that I do that has helped is I try to do something simple to keep my mind occupied that doesn't require like a lot of physical work. So doing like a puzzle, it's just enough to keep my mind moving, but not enough to where I'm like having to use like critical thinking skills. Like I'm not thinking deeply into it. One of my favorite things to do when I just cannot get my mind to stop is to do a body scan meditation. It's where you focus on each part of your body, starting from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, and you focus on relaxing each muscle. So it gives your mind something to do while also like kind of like relaxing yourself and getting yourself ready. I do those specifically at night because I have really trouble falling asleep. So that helps me to like fall asleep easily. I found coloring. Coloring is very minimal. It doesn't take a lot. It's a little bit creative. So it gives you like that little creative boost that you may be missing out on. But it's just something very small to keep my mind from going off into the deep end and thinking about the 1,000 different tasks that I should be doing. And it's giving it something to focus on so that both my mind and my body can find rest.
That is so interesting that you raise that because, and I think our listeners will probably, some of you will agree with this too, but when I go on holidays and I tell my brain, hey, let's go lie by the pool and not do anything and give my brain a rest, my brain goes, wah! And it goes into deep anxiety. So then I start going, oh, what if the team isn't working properly at home? What if sales drop off? And it's like the anxiety rears its head, so that going on holidays becomes almost traumatic because I'm going to suffer from anxiety attacks and panic attacks when I go on leave. And so what I discovered, and I would love your take on this because you've just raised some really interesting things about puzzling and drawing. But for me, I took my daughter to Europe last year on a holiday, and just by doing different activities each day, you know, maybe going for a bike ride around Paris or walking through the streets using a map, I didn't have a single moment of anxiety on the whole holiday because instead of doing business activities with my brain, I did tourist activities. So I worked out that now a holiday needs to contain some things, not nothing, because the idea of sitting around doing nothing is actually traumatic. And I think that I'd love to know how you've navigated that as well.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way when I travel. I get very anxious with blank space, which is, I'm sure you're
exactly what I'm talking about.
I get very anxious with blank space. So it's like, I don't necessarily need to stick to like a full itinerary, but I have to know that there is going to be something for me to do. So if we're just sitting in the hotel room, that is going to drive me crazy. But I know if I can go by the pool and sit by the pool, I'm going to bring a book with me if I'm not getting in, and I'm going to sit there and read that book. And I make sure it's not a business book. It's a fiction book, a thriller, whatever it is. It's nothing business related. But yeah, I am the same exact way. And even I take like self-care days, or I call them my me days, which are typically on Mondays. And even then I will lay in the bed and, kind of scroll through TV for a little while, but I also still need to know, okay, I have to get out the bed and do something, or my mind is going to like start sending out sparks. So I have to have something planned, whether it's like going to the library or going to get a pedicure or taking myself out to lunch or going for a walk. It has to be something to keep my mind at least slightly occupied so that I don't get into like that trap of thinking, I should check this email. Oh, I didn't respond to this person last week. Oh, I should do this. Oh, I should do that. So like getting those little self-care things to like wrap your mind around helps me a lot. But no, I absolutely get it. Blank space does scare me a lot.
What if 60 minutes could change your business? You don't need another course or another free downloadable PDF. You need actual revenue generating moves that work right now in e-commerce brands in 2025. And that's exactly what a quick wins call with SheCom is all about. In just 1 hour, our expert coaching team will deep dive into your brand, your numbers, your marketing, your sales, and pinpoint the exact tweaks that can unlock more profit, more sales, and more ease as you grow. So are you ready for some quick wins in your business? Book your call now at shecom.co, because the faster you take action, the faster you grow your revenues. Now, I've heard you say that self-care isn't always pretty. It is things like the therapy sessions you've just mentioned. Maybe it's around boundaries and hard conversations. What's been one of the most powerful, maybe unpretty self-care moments for you?
Yeah, it would have to be therapy, I would say. I put it off for a really long time because when I was kind of going through that phase of like burnout, kind of in and out of it, I would have some pretty low lows where I would think, oh, I need therapy. But then when I would hit that high again, it's like, oh, I'm fine. I'm healed. I don't need it anymore. And therapy has really made me sit in my mess. And my therapist always tells me it has to get bad before it can get better. And it's brought up a lot of things that make me really uncomfortable as far as like my childhood and how I was raised, and those like stories that I constantly tell myself that I don't even realize that I do, and having to like unpack that and taking those thoughts and then actively thinking about, okay, no, what is the truth around this negative thought that I am having? All of that sucks. Like, it is not easy. It's a lot of unpacking and forcing yourself to face some of the hard parts. But once you get through that bit by bit, it does get better. And I think that self-care has absolutely become a buzzword. And if you Google it, it's going to come up with spa, bubble bath, face masks, pedicures. And like, yes, those things are awesome, but they're also quick fixes. A lot of self-care is facing the fact that you are not where you are supposed to be, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, and that there is some work that has to be done. And it takes a lot of looking in the mirror, honestly, and getting very real and very honest with yourself and saying, is this the person that I want to be? Is this the person that I want my children bragging about when they're older? When I'm 70 years old, am I going to look back on my life and say, wow, like I had a really great life? Or am I going to look back on my life and say, I wish I had done more? That is not the good part, or not the good part. It's not the easy part of self-care, but it's the necessary part. So it's not always pretty. Self-care involves a lot of tears, a lot of journaling, a lot of therapy, a lot of sitting with yourself, but it is just as important as the vacations you take and the naps that you have.
Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff, Alisha. I think that very underrated or perhaps not talked about enough. And I'd love to get you to share with our listeners how they might go about finding a therapist that would be the right person to take them through this journey. Is it a counselor or a psychologist, or is it somebody who specializes in mental health or women's health, or what would be your parameters for finding a therapist?
Yeah, so I would just think about first before like diving in. There are a ton of like different directories and things online. I found my therapist through an app called growtherapy.com, which was really helpful because you can like make the filters and parameters around like what type of therapist that you're looking for. But for me, finding my therapist, I just kind of started with someone who I knew I would feel comfortable like speaking to. So I was like, I wanted someone who is older than me. So at least had been a therapist for like 10 or 12 years. I'll be in their career for at least 10 to 12 years. I wanted to feel like I was talking to like my aunt in a way. So someone who would make me feel comfortable with talking to them, but who also would not take any crap from me and who would call me out on my shit. Like, honestly, I wanted someone to say like, yes, that's cute, but girl, we're not doing that. Like, that's what I needed, that little bit of tough love. So yeah. So once I kind of got in my head the type of person I wanted to speak to, I would go through like a lot of these like directories. So growth therapy is who I use. There's like Psychology Today that you can find. I definitely recommend going with someone who, you know, has gone through the training and who is like a licensed mental health therapist. And a lot of them I have found have different like specialties. Like if you're really struggling with anxiety or depression or anything that you know, feel like is really like a pain point in your life right now, there are a lot of different specializations that they have. But I think you also have to remember that finding a good therapist is like dating. You may have to go through a few people and you don't have to feel like the first call you have with someone, you automatically have to get married with them. No, you have to like go through a few people until you find someone that it really clicks. And I think once you find that person, you'll know right off the bat, like this is the person that I feel like I can trust with helping me get to the next level of my life.
Because we talk a little bit around our business's success is a reflection of our emotional world. And when we're dealing with some shit in our personal life, sometimes our businesses get a little bit tumultuous and rocky, and perhaps revenues deteriorate because we are emotionally retracting, or we're allowing anxiety or depression to like rule in our, even just like the whole abundance mentality that The Secret, you know, the book and the movie brought out for all of us of like, you are what you attract. And I think it's almost like we have an obligation to ourselves, our families, and our businesses to do the emotional work in order to be able to be the happiest, wholest, healthiest versions of ourselves. And I think when we do, our businesses like automatically bounce back up as a result of that. That's been my experience anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, no, same. I tell people all the time, you can't show up as a great entrepreneur and help all of these other people if you're not helping yourself. If all those times that I was like going in and out of burnout, when I was really low, I was barely checking in on coaching clients. And if I was, it was probably very basic. I had no energy to go out and get new clients, so which means I wasn't making any money. But as soon as I would get back up on that high again, I'm like, yes, let's do this webinar. Let's create this content. Like, let me get on these sales calls. So excited. So like, you can't expect to be feeling at your lowest and have enough to give other people. Like, that's just not how it works. And the quote of you have to fill up your cup before you do someone else's, like, it's a little cliche, but it's the honest truth. Like, you cannot run on empty and expect to put out your best work. It's just not possible.
And I wonder, like, I've heard the sayings around people who have lived a full life and they're on their deathbed. They look back at their life and they don't remember the money they made or the holidays they had. They remember the quality of the relationships they have. And as a mama who's raising a 14-year-old daughter, and my daughter and my husband both, I suppose, get cranky with me because I'm on my phone and doing my business a lot. And I'm obsessed with it, to be honest. My business obsesses me because I love it and I love my team. I love what we're mission-led to build something incredible in the world. But equally, I wonder sometimes, I guess I have guilt around, am I choosing the wrong thing right now? Like, how do we define, or should we be defining what our big goal is in the world? And I'm a really big fan of a big, hairy, audacious goal, like go big, girl. But sometimes is that actually a mistake? Should we perhaps rein in our ambition a little in order to be more present with our families? Like, I'd love to know how this has landed for you.
Yeah. I don't believe that we have to be less ambitious. I don't like telling women to shrink themselves or their goals. Like, that's a whole different conversation we could have. But I believe that you have to be very honest with yourself about the current season that you're in and what is your top priority in this season. And it doesn't mean that you still can't be an entrepreneur, but in this season, what or who is needing you the most? For example, a few summers ago, my mom had some really rough complications from COVID that had her in and out of the hospital like every other week. Like, it was rough. And even though I was running my business at that time, in that season, she needed me. So there were a lot of things that I had to outsource. The days that I did have to focus on my business, I needed to make sure I got as much scheduled at that time because I knew I would have these other days where I would have to be in her doctor's appointments with her, making sure that she is okay. So just thinking about what is in this season and what needs you. If I am in a season of a new launch, then I have to communicate that with my family saying, hey, I'm launching this thing. It's going to require a little bit more of me. I may not be able to show up for everything that you need me to show up for in this season, but just know once I get past this launch, my priorities are going to shift again. So I think that women entrepreneurs specifically, we kind of get tripped up in all of this because we're trying to do or give everything 100% all at the same time. But that's just how we're going to burn ourselves out. We're going to drive ourselves crazy. So we really have to think about, what season am I in right now? Maybe you're in a season where your marriage really just needs you. So you're going to put more effort and more time there. Maybe again, you're in a launch season of your business. So that needs more. It's summertime here. So my daughter is kind of doing off and on summer camp. So on her off weeks, I am fully focused on entertaining her during those weeks. And then on the week she's in summer camp, that's when I am pouring back into my business. So you kind of have to I don't want to say plan out everything to a T, but just be very honest with yourself about where you are and then set those goals based on that season. And it doesn't mean that you have to make your goals any smarter. You may just have to redistribute it a little bit differently throughout the year.
So my season at the moment is going for about 3 years. Is this like a bit of a too long season? We might need to break them up a little.
I'm not sure. Maybe I would. That's like a good journaling exercise though. Sitting down. No, I'm the type of person who I have to process things like that on paper. So sit down and write that out. Say, what really needs me? Could I let go a little bit of the reins in the business and trust my team or delegate a little bit more so that I can spend, I know you said it's cold there, so that I can spend this cozy season with maybe bundled up with my family, I don't know, watching movies or something. So just kind of working through that. I have to do that a lot too, especially so I do have ADHD and A lot of times my mind will try to tell me that everything is a priority. And that's when I have to sit down on paper and say, okay, my daughter is in summer camp right now, 5 days a week for this week. During the day from 8 to 5, she's a priority, but she's not my main focus. So let me put this focus somewhere else so that when she's home, I can then focus on her. So like putting it down on paper and just being very realistic with yourself and saying like, okay, not everything is like a ticking time bomb. Like what actually needs me right now?
So for somebody who's listening right now, who's feeling completely burnt out, but doesn't know where to start, what's the very first step you think they should take today?
Ooh, I would say to do a time audit of your day. So sitting down and writing out everything that you're doing in a day, even if that's just scrolling through social media. And then I want you to think about what throughout that day is causing you the most stress. What is causing you the biggest hang up? What is, you'll know it. You know, when you sit down to do a project or something and it just feel anxious, it's not clicking, like you're exhausted, like it's not working. So pinpoint what in your day is often making you feel that way. And then ask yourself, okay, how can I change this? Because nothing changes if nothing changes. If you want to break the cycle of burnout, you have to stop or change or stop doing something or change the way something is working in order for you to get out of that. So if you're going through your day and you're saying, okay, I am spending 8 hours creating content, and that is really a pain point for me. It is stressing me out. When I do it, I'm not happy. I'm exhausted. Okay, then rethink that. Maybe you need to restructure your social media strategy or your content strategy. Maybe you need to outsource the editing. Maybe you need to outsource the whole thing. Like, what can you do to break that cycle? Because if you say, oh, well, creating this content is bothering me, but then the next day you keep doing it, you're just going to continue through that cycle of burnout. So in order for something to change, something has to change. So go through your day and say, okay, what is that pain point? What is this sticking point that is really not sitting well with me? If it is taking client calls, maybe that is just something that is leaving you exhausted. You're not feeling fulfilled. You are not happy to get on these client calls. Trust me, I have been there before. Then instead of adding on more clients that are just going to continue to exhaust you, think about another way that you can help these same people that's not going to require for you to show up on these calls all day long. So something has to change, but you don't know what it is until you actually are intentional about how you're going about your day. What are you doing? And how are each of those things making you feel? And in therapy also.
Therapy. And what about for our listeners who might be shaking their heads right now saying, I feel like I'm too far gone in burnout, like I'm too overwhelmed to even think about rest. Like, what would you want her to know?
Oh my goodness. There is no such thing as being too far gone. I have been an entrepreneur in some capacity for 10 plus years, and I probably spent a solid 7 or 8 of those burned out. So you are not too far gone, but it is time for a change. It may be time for you to have a very honest, hard conversation with yourself about your business and if it is still fulfilling you, or about your life and how you're living your life, if that is still fulfilling you. Just because something is making you money does not mean that it's still a right fit for you and the life you want to live. So start there. Ask yourself, like, what does my ideal day look like? What is the life I want to live? Do you want more space in your day? Then you have to create a business model or change your business model to be able to support that. You can't say, I want more space in my day and then take on 12 one-on-one client calls every single day. Like, there's no alignment in that. So you really do have to get clear on what it is that you want and make those necessary changes. And I know we talked about this before of how I just quit my business. I'm not saying you have to be that dramatic with it, but there may be some things that you have to change that are going to be really hard to let go of. And it's better now to create a plan for how to get out of that or how to make those changes before your body forces you to. And that's the point that I don't want anyone to get to, because that is very hard to get out of. So yeah, think about what it is that you want and how can you build your business around that.
I feel like it's got to be a little bit of a death of the ego here too, because every
Yeah.
time I've gone to pivot in business, and I am a fan of, well, I'm a bit famous for saying I reserve the right each week to change my mind about something I thought the previous week. We don't have to just always say, hey, this is what I think, and I've said it out loud, so I'm going to stick to it. But I feel as business women and entrepreneurs, we have a duty to ourselves to let go of ego when it comes to our success or our perceived version of success, because otherwise we can't have a death of things. Like I know for me, last October and November, I had to kill off a whole X section of my business, and that hurt. I had to let some of my favorite people go, and I had to tell my clients, actually, these things don't serve us anymore, even though my clients loved them. So I had to detach my ego from it. And I had to recognize that my job as the CEO here of this business is fatigue management for my team. It's not okay, not just okay to look after myself, but I have to make sure I don't burn out my people either. And I had to let go and cut and cull and kill off a whole couple of sections of my company. And definitely for me, my experience is I had to let go of ego.
Yeah, it's okay to admit that you tried something and it's no longer working. I think that's the strongest thing you can do as a leader and as an entrepreneur, is to say, you know what, y'all, I tried this. It is not working. Let's pivot. Let's cut our ties and do something new. And that is okay. I feel like more respect comes from saying, hey, I messed up or I changed my mind, than it is to, like you said, end up burning out your entire team.
It's a breath of fresh air, really, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So I have loved our conversation today, Alisha, but we're almost out of time. And right at the end of our podcast, I always ask 5 fast questions. They're little snap answer questions. So I want to ask you, what is one word to describe you that would surprise people?
Ooh, silly.
Great. Yeah. I love a bit of silliness in business.
I do too. Yeah.
Very
you
important.
Have to make it fun. Yeah, it's too serious sometimes.
It's like the counterbalance. It's like we're really serious sometimes, so we have to like switch the anchor the other way and counterbalance it with some lightness and silliness. I love that.
Yeah.
What's one word that you have to describe running a business?
Oh, can I use 2 words? Oh.
Yes. Of course.
Okay. Beautifully chaotic.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Beautifully chaotic. Definitely love that. What's the first thing you do when you feel stuck?
I write it down. Whatever is in my head, it could be random words or incomplete sentences. I get all out of my head and onto paper.
And what's a brand you're obsessed with right now?
Oh my goodness. You know what? I still love the Magnolia brand, Joanna Gaines and her husband. I am obsessed. I have read their books. I like research and listen to their interviews. Like, I'm obsessed with Joanna Gaines.
Amazing. And if you had to put into one sentence your biggest business lesson that you have learned thus far, what would it be?
Ooh. It is okay to change your mind. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think that's it. Yeah.
That is the most perfect place for us to finish our conversation today. So listeners, if you loved today's episode with Alisha, I would love for you to leave a quick review on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. We really love to hear from our listeners, and it would make me do a little bit of a happy dance if you could give some feedback today on our podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, Alisha.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of She Talks. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas, gave you strategies you can put into action, and reminded you that you're never alone on this journey. If you loved this episode, head over to shecom.co for today's show notes, exclusive freebies, and special offers from our sponsors. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and most importantly, keep talking.